Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to tackle a concept that's literally the bedrock of all statistical inquiry. Whether you're analyzing a market trend, researching public health, or, just trying to make sense of the numbers flashing on the news every day, you are relying on data. But here's the thing. Not all data is created equal. Knowing exactly where your numbers come from completely changes how you should use them. So today, we're demystifying the numbers by jumping right into the great data showdown, primary versus secondary data. But hey, before we get into the ring and compare our two heavyweights, we've got to start with the fundamentals. Ask yourself, what exactly is data? I mean, we hear the word thrown around constantly, right? We know it's important, but to really grasp the showdown we're talking about today, we have to pin down precisely what we mean when we use that word in a statistical sense. So the formal definition is that data are the numerical descriptions of certain observations or things. Think about it like this. If we walked into a classroom right now and just jotted down the exact ages or maybe the heights of every single student in that room, the aggregate of all those numbers, that becomes our data. Or zoom out to a much larger scale. If we track the annual production of rice in India over a span of, say, several years, that numerical information is data. It's the raw material. It's the absolute starting point for statisticians. Without it, statistical analysis just literally isn't possible. And this brilliantly illustrates the next crucial point in our foundation. Think of raw data as a completely haphazard stack of crude, unorganized figures. Kind of like getting 50 student heights just listed randomly by roll number. It's a mess. But when we organize that crude mass into ordered data, arranging the figures systematically, well, suddenly the significant features pop out. They actually stand out and make sense. Section 1. The contenders. Primary versus secondary data. Let's kick things off with primary data. This is data collected by the investigator themselves, straight from the individual respondents, specifically for a brand new study. The famous statistician Wessel actually hit the nail on the head when he said that data originally collected in the process of investigation are known as primary data. The absolute key word for you to remember here is firsthand. It is totally original in character because you're going straight to the source of origin to get it. You aren't borrowing this data, you are out there discovering it. To ground this in reality, let's look at a couple of concrete examples. A national population census? That is a massive, massive undertaking of primary data collection. Enumerators literally go door to door, gathering original facts directly from households. Or, on a much smaller scale, imagine you're assigned a project to find out what people in your specific neighborhood are buying. If you conduct a survey, physically going to households and asking them directly about their purchases of packed foods or medicines, you're collecting primary data. You are the field worker gathering those fresh, original numbers. Now, on the flip side of that, we have secondary data. If primary data is firsthand, well, secondary data is, by definition, secondhand. This is data that is not collected by the investigator themselves. Instead, all the heavy lifting has already been done by some other person or an agency or an institution. To quote Wessel again, data collected from other persons are called secondary data. The investigator isn't conducting a new survey here. Instead, they're obtaining this information from existing published or unpublished records, journals, or government reports. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, let's say you want to study population growth trends. Instead of going door to door to count people, which, let's be real, would be absurdly difficult for just one person to pull off, you simply grab the official census report that a government agency has already published. By processing the data available in that existing report to extract trends on population growth, or maybe to find changes in the sex ratio or mortality rates, you are utilizing secondary data. The data already existed. You are just stepping in and giving it a brand new analytical purpose. Section 2, the showdown, 3 core differences. Now, what's really interesting here is how we directly compare our two contenders. The first fundamental difference we see is in originality. Primary data is entirely original in character. Because the investigator collects it straight from the source of origin, it's untouched, first-hand information. Conversely, secondary data completely lacks that originality for the investigator using it. Since it was collected by other people or agencies in the past, it's inherently second-hand. You are essentially looking at the world through the lens of someone else's initial collection efforts. The second major difference is suitability, and honestly, this is a big one. Notice the distinction here. Primary data is custom-built. Because the investigator sets out with a very specific, predetermined objective, they design their survey exactly to meet that goal. The resulting data needs zero adjustment. It is a perfect fit for the study. Secondary data, however, was collected by someone else for their own distinct purpose. And because the original agency's goals might be wildly different from what you're trying to do, secondary data often needs to be carefully adjusted, tweaked, or reformatted to suit your new objective. It's literally the difference between buying a custom-tailored suit and just buying something off the rack. The third and final core difference comes down to the cost of collection. Gathering primary data is a massive undertaking. It involves high expenses in terms of money, immense amounts of time, and frankly, a ton of human energy. You have to hire field workers, train enumerators, physically travel to the sources. It is a highly costly proposition for sure. By contrast, secondary data is vastly more economical. Since it simply involves obtaining existing journals, reports, or government publications, it is just so much less expensive when it comes to time, money, and overall effort. Section 3. A matter of degree. The final twist. Let's see how this builds into something a bit more nuanced. We've spent all this time drawing a hard line between these two categories, right? Comparing them across originality, suitability, cost. But in the real world of statistics, things aren't always so black and white. The statistician Seacrest brilliantly points out the distinction between primary and secondary data is one of the degree. Data which at primary in the hands of one party may be secondary in the hands of the other. This is such a crucial realization. Think about it. If an investigator goes out and conducts a massive, expensive survey directly from the source, they have generated primary data. But the absolute second they publish that data and another researcher comes along to use it for a brand new study, that exact same data instantly transforms into secondary data for the new user. The data itself didn't magically change. Only the relationship between the data and the investigator changed. Which leaves us with the final thought to take away from this explainer. The statistics we rely on to understand our world are built on this vast, totally interconnected web of shared information. So, the next time you read a report, look at a chart, or analyze a statistic, challenge yourself. Ask yourself, whose primary data are you actually borrowing? Understanding the true origin of your data is the first and absolutely most important step to truly understanding what that data actually means.